There are many different types of tools and methods for catching shrimp. Each requires some experience and skill. Practice makes perfect. It goes without saying that you can't always go out and catch a new species and fill your cooler. The first time I targeted red grouper around the inshore waters near Surf City, North Carolina, it took me 9 frustrating, fishless days before I figured it out. Now, I can count on catching a few for dinner every time I go fishing. Shrimp fishing is no exception. Get familiar with some of the shrimping tools in this section and you'll increase your chances of landing a big catch. Commercial shrimp boats. While commercial shrimping can produce a bumper crop, it's a learned craft and not an activity for tourists or recreational anglers. These anglers are highly experienced in a physically demanding and often dangerous job. Cast nets. Cast nets are circular nets with weight distributed around the perimeter. They are designed to be thrown and retrieved multiple times and are very effective for catching fish, shrimp, or bait. The net is thrown by hand so that it spreads out in the air before falling into the water and sinking to the target species. Cast nets are typically made from nylon or rope and common sizes range from 4 to 12 feet in diameter, although cast nets can be purchased in sizes of 20 feet or larger. A rope is attached to the net at one end and tied to your wrist at the other end. The mesh size of the net typically ranges from 3/8 to 3/4 inch. Your target species, as well as the regulations of your area, will help you determine what mesh size is best. Cast nets can be thrown from boats, piers and docks, from shore, or while wading in the water. One of the main questions I get asked is, what size net is best for throwing? There are many factors that determine this answer: the strength of the caster, the target species, the depth of the water, the skill of the caster, etc. My best answer is, the size you can throw best. There is no need to kill yourself by throwing a large net if all you can throw are bananas. Practice at home on a chair, boat, or picnic table and your experience on the water will be more effective. Seine netting. One of my fondest memories as a child was spending weeks vacationing with my family in Garden City, SC. My grandfather was an avid outdoorsman and had many cousins and uncles who were always up for wildlife adventures. Seine netting is an old, traditional method that is not used as much as it was when I was a kid in the early 1980s. Seine netting consists of a piece of mesh netting that is rimmed at each end with a 6 to 8 foot wooden or fiberglass stake. The mesh nets between stakes are usually 6 feet high with small floats along the top line and weights along the bottom line to hold them tight to the creek or ocean bottom. The size of the trawl varies, but the average size is about 6 feet high and 30 feet long. These nets are pulled through low-tide creeks or near shore with one person at each stake. Dip nets. Dip nets are very similar to regular fishing nets, however, they usually have a smaller mesh size and can be equipped with a long pole or handle. Dip nets can be used from boats, under blocks and bridges, or even when the angler wades through shallow water. Dip nets are used to catch shrimp that can be seen as they drift in the upper water column. Often, green lights are used at night to attract shrimp and aid visibility. This is a very popular tool for shrimping in Florida off bridges and retaining walls in all seasons, including winter. Check out this video of a shrimp trap or crawfish trap. These names are often used interchangeably, such as shrimp and crawfish. There are some slight variations in appearance and design, but for the purposes of this article, we will refer to them as shrimp traps. The best way to describe a shrimp trap is as a miniature version of a crab trap. Typically, the trap is square or rectangular with multiple entrances where the shrimp enter but do not exit. There is an area for bait. We will discuss our top baits for shrimp traps later in this article. The wire mesh is much smaller than a crab trap, so the shrimp cannot escape. A lead line is attached to the top of the shrimp trap that can be secured to a buoy, dock, bridge, or the side of your boat. Make sure you check your local regulations regarding the appropriate permits for using a shrimp trap. It is also important that your trap is marked with certain identification tags that link the shrimp trap to you. When do they bite? What are you catching them with? What are the weather conditions like? Is there any wind? Is the water clear or a little murky? Have you noticed the water temperature? What depth are you catching the most shrimp at? Are there any boats around you that are having success? There are many rules for catching shrimp besides the endless list when it comes to conditions. Where? Your local seafood market. Just kidding. Shrimp are migratory but spend a lot of time during certain months of the year along the coast and most estuary systems. They are easily found in small inlets and larger bays feeding on shallow flats. Most of these areas are relatively shallow, allowing you to catch shrimp with a trawl, purse seine, or any of the previously mentioned tools. A good place to start is to experiment with trawling in several small tidal inlets until you find the areas with the best concentrations. Then you will need to hone your skills to maximize your catch. Another factor when considering where to go shrimping is paying attention to the water conditions. By conditions, we mean water clarity or salinity. Pink shrimp prefer clear water, brown shrimp prefer deeper water with more colored water, and white shrimp prefer shallow water and are more tolerant of lower salinities than their relatives. Regardless of the type of shrimp, they all have preferred water conditions that will greatly assist the angler in removing large amounts of unproductive water. What time? When considering the best time to go shrimping, it is important to check your local tide forecast. A useful general rule of thumb with tidal waters is that, when there is less water, there are fewer places for fish to hide. In other words, the hours before and after low tide are best for recreational shrimping by hand, as the shrimp tend to be more concentrated. Call your local bait and tackle shop or check the paper for the current tide schedule in your area. Plan your trip around low tide so you can focus on the intertidal zones. Shrimping at night or during a full moon is often more productive. Take extra precautions when planning a night trip. Even areas you think are familiar can seem very hazy at night. It is often difficult to navigate at night, and even familiar areas can be quite disorienting, especially when shrimping from a boat. I have lost more than one acquaintance in boating accidents, including my great-grandfather. Always respect the dangers of the water and know your limits. Have fun shrimping, but be safe on the water. What does Mother Nature have to do with it? Everything. As discussed, tides and daylight can play a big role in shrimping success. Mother Nature controls the wind, currents, rainfall, and temperature. Shrimp are less affected by these variables than humans, but for success and safety, it is crucial to carefully consider weather conditions and forecasts when planning your trip. Water is dangerous enough when conditions are perfect. Ideally, we want to plan a shrimping trip that balances water clarity, tides, and weather conditions so we can focus on what is most important, catching shrimp in optimal conditions while always keeping safety in mind. It is important to note that shrimp are sensitive to light. They are often found in shallower water than usual on cloudy days. There are also many different types of shrimp. We have briefly discussed some of the most common tools used for catching shrimp. Now let's discuss some of the different techniques that use these tools. Shrimp bait with a cast net. Using shrimp bait has been very popular in South Carolina for many years. In fact, it was so popular that in South Carolina, regulations were put in place in the early 1980s to manage the number of licensed recreational shrimpers and the number of shrimp that could be caught. At one point in the early 1990s, there were over 18,000 shrimp fishing licenses issued in South Carolina. Like any type of fishing, using shrimp bait can lead to tough days when you may not catch as many as you hoped. However, using shrimp bait in conjunction with a cast net can yield some great catches of shrimp that will fill your belly and quickly fill your freezer. It is recommended that there are at least 2 shrimpers doing this type of shrimp fishing. Having a good boat driver is just as important as having an effective shrimper. Check out this 20-minute shrimping workshop for more information on shrimp bait and the best bait for shrimp, original, bait binder, ball bait. Baiting shrimp with a net can be an easy method to use in your area or state. Just always be sure to check your regulations on the use of bait for shrimp and be aware of your daily rules regarding catch limits. Shrimp Love Bait Binder, the original. If you want to attract all the shrimp to one area and make casting your net more fun, try the original. It's fast, durable, and powerful. You won't be disappointed. Shrimp traps are usually made of metal mesh, while shrimp pots are usually made of wire mesh, similar to cast net material. The size of the trap or pot varies depending on the size and different types of shrimp you want to catch. Both structures have one or more funnel-shaped entrances that point inward. The shrimp, attracted to the shrimp bait inside, will enter through these funnel-shaped entrances and will not be able to escape. Shrimp traps and shrimp pots come with other accessories that make this technique very effective. When necessary, you should add weights to keep the trap, pot at the bottom without moving. Shrimp traps are designed to catch more than a few shrimp, so they need to stay in place for a period of 12 hours. There are vinyl-coated weights for sale, but you can use old hand weights or any old piece of iron. Let factors such as water depth, currents, and weather forecasts determine the amount of weight needed for your shrimp trap conditions. You should use weighted wire, sea blue wire, to help keep the shrimp trap from lifting off the bottom. Always use a wire that is 25% longer than the depth of the water where you are setting the shrimp trap. Attach a brightly colored buoy or float to the other end of the lead line. Be careful to choose a buoy that is large enough to float your line but not large enough to lift your trap off the bottom in rough seas. Paint your buoy a bright color and check your rules and regulations. Some states require you to display your name, address, and phone number on the buoy. Other states require you to display your hull number. What is the best bait for a crawfish trap? Bait binder, the original, of course. Crawfish are omnivores and will eat almost anything that smells like protein in the water. Tuna, canned pet food, and dead fish are all good choices, but for ease of use, effectiveness, and durability, buy a bag of bait binder, the original. Happy crawfishing. Dip netting. Dip netting is popular in many places, but perhaps nowhere more so than Florida. Dip netting, especially at night, has become a popular recreational activity. This is an activity that all familiar members can participate in, most importantly children. After the sun sets below the horizon, shrimp move into shallower water in most estuary systems. This is good news for recreational anglers. You can use this method from boats, piers, docks, and in some cases, from shore. Dip net shrimpers will use lanterns or submerged lights. Blue lights are usually best, combined with bait to attract shrimp. Anglers will wait to see the shrimp drift by with the current and use a dip net, as described in our shrimping gear section, to harvest. As always, familiarize yourself with your area's regulations regarding bait and equipment requirements. We always recommend the original bait binder as the standard bait for shrimp. Shrimp Sen, one of my fondest memories as a child is the weeks we spent on summer vacation in Garden City, SC. I look forward to those 7 days in July more than Christmas. The beach, the roller coaster, Sam's Corner arcade, and when I was older, the young girls in swimsuits, of course, were all popular attractions. However, the most anticipated part of the trip was the pier that straddled the Garden City Canal. The Garden City Canal was small, perhaps 25 yards wide, but long and filled with just about every type of marine life the area had to offer. We loved crabbing, fishing, bait fishing, casting nets, and hauling my grandfather's shrimp Sen. Much of my love of the salt water came from Joe Lay Sr., and I am forever indebted to him for sharing these times with me. Trawling was often a wet, muddy, and tiring activity, but it was exciting because of the variety of species you encountered and the bountiful shrimp harvest it could yield. The trawls were typically 20 to 40 feet long and 4 to 6 feet high. The bottom edge of the net is lined with lead weights to hold the bottom edge down so that the shrimp do not escape. The top edge has small buoys or floats to keep the top of the net afloat. The ends of the net are attached to wooden or fiberglass poles which are used to drag the net along a small tidal creek.